This week's Grimm Fairy Tales. Fair Katrinelje and Pif-Paf-Poltrie. Good day, Father Hollanth. Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie. May I be allowed to have your daughter? Oh yes, if Mother Milk Cow, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Kizzitrout, and fair Katrinelje are willing, you can have her. Where is Mother Milk Cow then? She is in the cow house, milking the cow. Good day, Mother Milk Cow.
Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie.
May I be allowed to have your daughter?
Oh yes, if Father Hollanth, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Kizzitrout, and fair Katrinelje are willing, you can have her.
Where is Brother High and Mighty then?
He is in the room chopping some wood.
Good day, Brother High and Mighty.
Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie.
May I be allowed to have your sister?
Oh yes, if Father Hollanth, Mother Milk Cow, Sister Kizzitrout, and fair Katrinelje are willing, you can have her.
Where is Sister Kizzitrout then?
She is in the garden cutting cabbage.
Good day, Sister Kizzitrout.
Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie.
May I be allowed to have your sister?
Oh yes, if Father Hollanth, Mother Milk Cow, Brother High and Mighty, and fair Katrinelje are willing, you may have her.
Where is fair Katrinelje then?
She is in the room, counting out her farthings.
Good day, fair Katrinelje.
Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie.
Wilt thou be my bride?
Oh yes, if Father Hollanth, Mother Milk Cow, Brother High and Mighty, and Sister Kizzitrout are willing, I am ready.
Fair Katrinelje, how much dowry hast thou?
14 farthings in ready money, 3.5 groschen owing to me, half a pound of dried apples, a handful of fried bread, and a handful of spices.
And how many other things are mine? Have I not a dowry fine?
Pif-Paf-Poltrie, what is thy trade? Art thou a tailor? Something better. A shoemaker? Something better. A husbandman? Something better. A joiner? Something better. A smith? Something better. A miller? Something better. Perhaps a broom maker.
Yes, that's what I am. Is it not a fine trade? The Old Beggar Woman. There was once an old woman, but thou hast surely seen an old woman go a-begging before now. This woman begged likewise, and when she got anything, she said,
May God reward you.
The beggar woman came to a door, and there by the fire a friendly rogue of a boy was standing warming himself. The boy said kindly to the poor old woman, as she was standing shivering thus by the door,
Come, old mother, and warm yourself.
She came in, but stood too near the fire, so that her old rags began to burn, and she was not aware of it. The boy stood and saw that, but he ought to have put the flames out. Is it not true that he ought to have put them out? And if he had not any water, then should he have wept all the water in his body out of his eyes, and that would have supplied 2 pretty streams with which to extinguish them. The Jew Among Thorns.
There was once a rich man who had a servant who served him diligently and honestly. He was every morning the first out of bed and the last to go to rest at night. And whenever there was a difficult job to be done, which nobody cared to undertake, he was always the first to set himself to it. Moreover, he never complained, but was contented with everything and always merry. When a year was ended, his master gave him no wages, for he said to himself,
"That is the cleverest way, for I shall save something, and he will not go away, but stay quietly in my service."
The servant said nothing, but did his work the second year as he had done it the first. And when at the end of this, likewise, he received no wages, he made himself happy and still stayed on. When the third year also was past, the master considered, put his hand in his pocket, but pulled nothing out. Then at last the servant said, "Master, for 3 years I have served you honestly. Be so good as to give me what I ought to have, for I wish to leave and look about me a little more in the world."
"Yes, my good fellow," answered the old miser. "You have served me industriously, and therefore you shall be cheerfully rewarded."
And he put his hand into his pocket, but counted out only 3 farthings, saying, "There you have a farthing for each year. That is large and liberal pay, such as you would have received from few masters." The honest servant, who understood little about money, put his fortune into his pocket and thought, "Ah, now that I have my purse full, why need I trouble and plague myself any longer with hard work?" So on he went, up hill and down dale, and sang and jumped to his heart's content. Now it came to pass that as he was going by a thicket, a little man stepped out and called to him, "Whither away, merry brother? I see you do not carry many cares." "Why should I be sad?" answered the servant. "I have enough. 3 years' wages are jingling in my pocket." "How much is your treasure?" the dwarf asked him. "How much? 3 farthings, sterling all told." "Look here," said the dwarf. "I am a poor, needy man. Give me your 3 farthings. I can work no longer, but you are young and can easily earn your bread." And as the servant had a good heart and felt pity for the old man, he gave him the 3 farthings, saying, "Take them. In the name of heaven, I shall not be any the worse for it." Then the little man said, "As I see, you have a good heart. I grant you 3 wishes, 1 for each farthing. They shall all be fulfilled." "Aha," said the servant. "You are one of those who can work wonders. Well then, if it is to be so, I wish first for a gun, which shall hit everything that I aim at. Secondly, for a fiddle, which when I play on it, shall compel all who hear it to dance. Thirdly, that if I ask a favor of anyone, he shall not be able to refuse it." "All that shall you have," said the dwarf, and put his hand into the bush. And only think, there lay a fiddle and gun, all ready, just as if they had been ordered. These he gave to the servant, and then said to him, "Whatever you may ask, at any time, no man in the world shall be able to deny you." "Heart alive, what can one desire more?" said the servant to himself, and went merrily onwards. So afterwards he met a Jew with a long goat's beard, who was standing listening to the song of a bird which was sitting up at the top of a tree.
Oh, good heavens,
he was exclaiming.
that such a small creature should have such a fearfully loud voice. If it were but mine, if only someone would sprinkle some salt upon its tail.
If that is all, said the servant, the bird shall soon be down here. And taking aim, he pulled the trigger, and down fell the bird into the thorn bushes. Go, you rogue, he said to the Jew, and fetch the bird out for yourself.
Oh,
said the Jew,
leave out the rogue, my master, and I will do it at once. I will get the bird out for myself, as you really have hit it.
Then he lay down on the ground and begun to crawl into the thicket. When he was fast among the thorns, the good servant's humor so tempted him that he took up his fiddle and began to play. In a moment, the Jew's leg began to move and to jump into the air, and the more the servant fiddled, the better went the dance. But the thorns tore his shabby coat from him, combed his beard, and prickled and plucked him all over the body.
Oh dear,
cried the Jew.
What do I want with your fiddling? Leave the fiddle alone, master. I do not want to dance.
But the servant did not listen to him, and thought, You have fleeced people often enough. Now the thorn bushes shall do the same to you. And he began to play over again, so that the Jew had to jump higher than ever, and scraps of his coat were left hanging on the thorns.
Oh, woe's me,
cried the Jew.
I will give the gentleman whatsoever he asks, if only he leaves off fiddling a purse full of gold.
If you are so liberal, said the servant, I will stop my music. But this, I must say to your credit, that you dance to it so well that it is quite an art. And having taken the purse, he went his way. The Jew stood still and watched the servant quietly until he was far off and out of sight. And then he screamed out with all his might,
You miserable musician! You beer-house fiddler! Wait till I catch you alone. I will hunt you till the soles of your shoes fall off. You ragamuffin! Just put 5 farthings in your mouth, and then you may be worth 3 halfpence.
And went on abusing him as fast as he could speak. As soon as he had refreshed himself a little in this way, and got his breath again, he ran into the town to the justice.
My dear judge,
he said,
I have come to make a complaint. See how a rascal has robbed and ill-treated me on the public highway. A stone on the ground might pity me, my clothes all torn, my body pricked and scratched, my little all gone with my purse. Good ducats, each piece better than the last. For God's sake, let the man be thrown into prison. Was it a soldier,
said the judge,
who cut you thus with his saber? Nothing of the sort,
said the Jew.
It was no sword that he had, but a gun hanging at his back and a fiddle at his neck. The wrench may easily be known.
So the judge sent his people out after the man, and they found the good servant, who had been going quite slowly along, and they found too the purse with the money upon him. As soon as he was taken before the judge, he said, I did not touch the Jew, nor take his money. He gave it to me of his own free will, that I might leave off fiddling because he could not bear my music.
Heaven defend us, cried the Jew. His lies are as thick as flies upon the wall.
But the judge also did not believe his tale, and said,
This is a bad defense. No Jew would do that.
And because he had committed robbery on the public highway, he sentenced the good servant to be hanged. As he was being led away, the Jew again screamed after him,
You vagabond! You dog of a fiddler! Now you're going to receive your Well-earned reward.
The servant walked quietly, with the hangman up the ladder, but upon the last step he turned round and said to the judge, "Grant me just one request before I die."
"Yes, if you do not ask your life," said the judge.
"I do not ask for life," answered the servant, "but as a last favor, let me play once more upon my fiddle." The Jew raised a great cry of,
"Murderer! Murder! For goodness sake, do not allow it! Do not allow it!"
But the judge said, "Why should I not let him have this short pleasure? It has been granted to him, and he shall have it." However, he could not have refused on account of the gift which had been bestowed on the servant. Then the Jew cried,
"Oh, woe's me! Tie me fast!"
while the good servant took his fiddle from his neck and made ready. As he gave the first scrape, they all began to quiver and shake, the judge, his clerk, and the hangman and his men, and the cord fell out of the hand of the one who was going to tie the Jew fast. At the second scrape, all raised their legs, and the hangman let go his hold of the good servant and made himself ready to dance. At the third scrape, they all leaped up and began to dance, the judge and the Jew being the best at jumping. Soon, all who had gathered in the marketplace out of curiosity were dancing with them, old and young, fat and lean, one with another. The dogs, likewise, which had run there, got up on their hind legs and capered about, and the longer he played, the higher sprang the dancers, so that they knocked against each other's heads and began to shriek terribly. At length, the judge cried, quite out of breath,
"I will give your life if you will only stop fiddling."
The good servant thereupon had compassion, took his fiddle and hung it round his neck again, and stepped down the ladder. Then he went up to the Jew, who was lying upon the ground, panting for breath, and said, "You rascal, now confess, whence you got the money, or I will take my fiddle and begin to play again."
I stole it. I stole it,"
cried he.
"But you have honestly earned it."
So the judge had the Jew taken to the gallows and hanged as a thief. King Thrushbeard. A king had a daughter who was beautiful beyond all measure, but so proud and haughty withal that no suitor was good enough for her. She sent away one after the other and ridiculed them as well. Once the king made a great feast and invited thereto from far and near all the young men likely to marry. They were all marshaled in a row according to their rank and standing. First came the kings, then the grand dukes, then the princes, the earls, the barons, and the gentry. Then the king's daughter was led through the ranks, but to every one she had some objection to make. One was too fat. "The wine cask," she said. Another was too tall. "Long and thin has little in." The third was too short. "Short and thick is never quick." The fourth was too pale as death. The fifth too red, a fighting cock. The sixth was not straight enough, a green log dried behind the stove. So she had something to say against everyone, but she made herself especially merry over a good king who stood quite high up in the row, and whose chin had grown a little crooked. "Well," she cried and laughed, "he has a chin like a thrush's beak." And from that time he got the name of King Thrushbeard. But the old king, when he saw that his daughter did nothing but mock the people, and despised all the suitors who were gathered there, was very angry, and swore that she should have for her husband the very first beggar that came to his doors. A few days afterwards, a fiddler came and sang beneath the windows, trying to earn a small alms. When the king heard him, he said,
"Let him come up."
So the fiddler came in his dirty, ragged clothes, and sang before the king and his daughter, and when he had ended, he asked for a trifling gift. The king said,
"Your song has pleased me so well that I will give you my daughter there to wife."
The king's daughter shuddered, but the king said,
"I have taken an oath to give you to the very first beggarman, and I will keep it."
All she could say was in vain. The priest was brought, and she had to let herself be wedded to the fiddler on the spot. When that was done, the king said,
"Now it is not proper for you, a beggar woman, to stay any longer in my palace. You may just go away with your husband."
The beggarman led her out by the hand, and she was obliged to walk away on foot with him. When they came to a large forest, she asked, "To whom does that beautiful forest belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had taken him, it would have been yours." "Ah, unhappy girl that I am! If I had but taken King Thrushbeard." Afterwards, they came to a meadow, and she asked again, "To whom does this beautiful green meadow belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had taken him, it would have been yours." "Ah, unhappy girl that I am! If I had but taken King Thrushbeard." Then they came to a large town, and she asked again, "To whom does this fine large town belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had taken him, it would have been yours." "Ah, unhappy girl that I am! If I had but taken King Thrushbeard." "It does not please me," said the fiddler, "to hear you always wishing for another husband. Am I not good enough for you?" At last they came to a very little hut, and she said, "Oh, goodness! What a small house! To whom does this miserable, mean hovel belong?" The fiddler answered, "That is my house and yours, where we shall live together." She had to stoop in order to go in at the low door. "Where are the servants?" said the king's daughter. "What servants?" answered the beggarman. "You must yourself do what you wish to have done. Just make a fire at once, and set on water to cook my supper. I am quite tired." But the king's daughter knew nothing about lighting fires or cooking, and the beggarman had to lend a hand himself to get anything fairly done. When they had finished their scanty meal, they went to bed. But he forced her to get up quite early in the morning in order to look after the house. For a few days they lived in this way as well as might be, and came to the end of all their provisions. Then the man said, "Wife, we cannot go on any longer eating and drinking here and earning nothing. You must weave baskets." He went out, cut some willows, and brought them home. Then she began to weave, but the tough willows wounded her delicate hands. "I see that this will not do," said the man. "You had better spin. Perhaps you can do that better." She sat down and tried to spin, but the hard threads soon cut her soft fingers, so that the blood ran down. "See," said the man, "you are fit for no sort of work. I have made a bad bargain with you. Now I will try to make a business with pots and earthenware. You must sit in the marketplace and sell the ware." "Alas," thought she, "if any of the people from my father's kingdom come to the market and see me sitting there, selling, how they will mock me." But it was of no use. She had to yield unless she chose to die of hunger. For the first time she succeeded well, for the people were glad to buy the woman's wares because she was good-looking and they paid her what she asked. Many even gave her the money and left the pots with her as well. So they lived on what she had earned as long as it lasted. Then the husband bought a lot of new crockery. With this she sat down at the corner of the marketplace and set it out round about her, ready for sale. But suddenly there came a drunken hussar galloping along, and he rode right amongst the pots so that they were all broken into 1,000 bits. She began to weep and did not know what to do for fear. "Alas, what will happen to me?" cried she. "What will my husband say to this?" She ran home and told him of the misfortune. "Who would seat herself at a corner of the marketplace with crockery?" said the man. "Leave off crying. I see very well that you cannot do any ordinary work. So I have been to our king's palace and have asked whether they cannot find a place for a kitchen maid, and they have promised me to take you. In that way you will get your food for nothing." The king's daughter was now a kitchen maid, and had to be at the cook's beck and call, and do the dirtiest work. In both her pockets, she fastened a little jar in which she took home her share of the leavings, and upon this they lived. It happened that the wedding of the king's eldest son was to be celebrated, so the poor woman went up and placed herself by the door of the hall to look on. When all the candles were lit, and people, each more beautiful than the other, entered, and all was full of pomp and splendor, she thought of her lot with a sad heart, and cursed the pride and her haughtiness which had humbled her and brought her to so great poverty. The smell of the delicious dishes which were being taken in and out reached her, and now and then the servants threw her a few morsels of them. These she put in her jars to take home. All at once the king's son entered, clothed in velvet and silk, with gold chains about his neck, and when he saw the beautiful woman standing by the door, he seized her by the hand, and would have danced with her, but she refused and shrank with fear, for she saw that it was King Thrushbeard, her suitor whom she had driven away with scorn. Her struggles were of no avail. He drew her into the hall, but the string by which her pockets were hung broke. The pots fell down, the soup ran out, and the scraps were scattered all about. And when the people saw it, there arose general laughter and derision, and she was so ashamed that she would rather have been 1,000 fathoms below the ground. She sprang to the door and would have run away, but on the stairs a man caught her and brought her back. And when she looked at him, it was King Thrushbeard again. He said to her kindly, "Do not be afraid. I am the fiddler who has been living with you in that wretched hovel all one. For love of you I disguised myself so, and I also was the hussar who rode through your crockery. This was all done to humble your proud spirit and to punish you for the insolence with which you mocked me." Then she wept bitterly and said, "I have done great wrong, and am not worthy to be your wife." But he said, "Be comforted. The evil days are past. Now we will celebrate our wedding." Then the maids in the waiting came and put on her the most splendid clothing, and her father and his whole court came and wished her happiness in her marriage with King Thrushbeard. And the joy now began in earnest. I wish you and I had been there too.